I want to ask, what was your opinion on the sermon, and what did you get out of it?
I got a lot out of it, right? This sermon made me see people in a different light. You know, as believers, we cannot judge people. We must leave that up to God, right? And this sermon taught me a lot today. I will watch it again on YouTube.
So you told me it made you see people differently, and how did it make you see people differently?
Right? In the light that we can judge one another because all of us are sinners. None of us is better than the other. You understand? That's what it showed me. Although I never used to judge no one because I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes in my lifetime. And I just pray to God every day that He will help me to change and forgive me, of all of the things that I've done and been through.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, man.
So your opinion and what you got out of the sermon today, Jesus walks.
But the sermon was very powerful, especially when he actually wanted her to stay where she was, and that means understanding that silence. We're sometimes uncomfortable with silence, and we make a decision. We answer the question before Jesus answered the question. So it was both powerful was that he said to stay where you are, grow where you are, and wait on Jesus to answer the question.
And in your life, how would you waited on Jesus and learn that you always have to wait? Just be patient.
Well, just recently, I transitioned from a different career from banking and went into school counseling, and right away I wanted Jesus to give me a job. In addition, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting on His answer, and I know that if I move forward, continue to move forward, and walk in the faith, He will eventually answer. And then I'm not assuming that He's not answering, but I know that He set me on a path, and He purposed me to go this direction.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So we got about 2 and 3 questions on the sermon. What you got out of it? The sermon Jesus walks. I'd like to ask you.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I liked it a lot.
So the sermon, like what really got you the most? Like parts that you could understand a lot.
Yeah.
That you could relate to.
That God is here for everyone that calls on Him.
So you said God is here for everyone.
Yeah.
How has God been here for you? I want to know about that.
He's been here for me with a lot. My family, just life, my struggles. I prayed a lot and He answered. So He has done a lot for me. Yeah.
So for today's sermon, I'd like to get out of your opinion the sermon Jesus walks today, and to see how you felt listening to it.
Oh, yes, I got a lot out of this sermon. This sermon was to let me know that you have to testify in your testimony because you don't want people to come into church and feel like everything is good. You have a walk, you have a testimony, and they say, "Well, those are my crumbs to tell me where I went, where I've been, to where I am now." You don't know. So your testimony to bless someone else. So me, as I sang in my ministry today, I usually say something about where I've been and where I've come from and where I am now. When they know about your past, people could believe and they have faith that God will always be there. Just gotta pray and just gotta ask. And He always walks with you and talks with you every way. And that song is my favorite song, Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior. When I sing that, I feel it from the head to my toes because it touches you that wherever you go, He will never pass you by.
So I'd like to ask you. You said no one ever knows where you came from, because the transition where you are now. I'd like to ask you, how has God brought you from where you were to where you are right now?
Well, I'm gonna give a personal testimony. I went through a divorce 3 years ago, and I didn't think that I was gonna make it. I was crying, I was depressed, I was sad. I thought it was just the end for me. And fast forward to now, I'm better where I stand. I'm better in my faith. He carries me. I have more than I had when I was married. I'm richer now, but I'm not rich in money. I'm rich in peace and everything that He does for me. And can no one take that from me because God gave that to me.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you about your sermon.
Okay.
And like who or what inspired you to write it?
Who inspired me to write it? Well, definitely God. He's always the one that inspires. I have always heard these stories growing up, and I think that sometimes we do the best that we can to interpret them, but ultimately there's always like hidden things in the text that we miss and we overlook because of cultural preferences or our own biases. So I love going back to stories that are familiar stories, and God just kind of gives me a new light on them. So
So yeah.
that's what inspired that message.
So a lot of time when I read or when I watch movies, I go back to miss like important life lessons that I missed. And I'd like to ask you, when you go back into those type of stories, what type of life lessons do you learn?
I just see God's consistent grace and his mercy. Every story in the Bible always points back to Jesus. The verses point back to Jesus. Everything is about how Jesus just saves us. So every time that I read, that's where I go. I said, how does Jesus save this person in this story? And it just speaks to me that way.
And I'm gonna ask you one last question. You just added with it speaks to you that way. And like how did you get that? Like I can't let's see. Like when you're reading something, remember you have to listen really closely. You got to see like what it's trying to tell you, and I'm sure it didn't just take a second to notice that. So how have you learned that in the Bible it always try to speak to you and give you a certain lesson?
That's a good question. So I find that if God says my word never turns back to me void, I have to believe that there is something in there for me. So when I read it, I make sure that it's speaking to me first. Before I preach it to anybody else, it has to speak to me. And then from there, you guys get the outpouring, the overflow, if you would. So I just hope that today's message was clear, that people understood that it was pretty simple. You just got to come as you are. You got to stay, no matter who's against you, and you got to grow up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions. So